via email clark@japarliament.gov.jm. All written submissions must be sent by Friday, January 29, 2021. Join the process. Let your voice be heard.
News just in. One man shove him brother in a one mango tree for one dumpling and him pop up. The victim, Pinchy, is from St. Thomas and he is in critical condition. Cookie in a ear, they mash up it.
And Registration Act, generally known as the NIDS Bill. I am Delroy Chuck, the chairman of the committee, and we have at the banquet hall 4 members sitting with us. Senator Charles Sinclair, Minister Senator Auburn Hill, Ministers Johnson Smith, and Minister Marsha Smith. But other members are on Zoom meeting with us virtually. So all 15 members of the committee will be participating, and I would like to say to members viewing and members and citizens listening, all your views will be taken into consideration by the Joint Select Committee. The committee started its meeting earlier, and so we welcome you to the meeting and to let you know that a number of your concerns, issues that you would like to raise, will be dealt with by the technical team of the Office of the Prime Minister. And here with us, the technical team, is Mr. Warren Vernon, the Program Director for NIDS, Mrs. Janelle Miller-Williams, the Senior Legal Officer in the Office of the Prime Minister, Mrs. Sharika Hemmings-Allison, the Principal Director, Office of the Prime Minister, Ms. Kamika Facey, the Legal Officer, and from the Ministry of Justice, Ms. Nadine Wilkins. May I just indicate that the purpose of these town hall meetings is in addition to the 100 and more institutions and organizations that have been invited to make written submissions. And if those written submissions come in, then the Joint Select Committee will invite those contributors to meet us in Parliament for deliberations starting as early as the first week in February. But these town hall meetings are basically to ensure that our citizens are well aware of what is in this bill, and also to try and educate and inform the public as best as possible. The issues, the highlights, to let persons know that this NIDS bill is beneficial to every citizen. It will be a game changer to allow the citizens to access the services of government and of the private sector, and that will be explained by the team from the Office of the Prime Minister this afternoon and in all of these town hall meetings. We want to emphasize that we are having 6 town hall meetings because we want to give the opportunity for every citizen to be able to participate. We have invited several or all of the media to join us at these town hall meetings so that listeners and viewers can participate. And we ask you to engage by sending in questions and concerns, which we're hoping that the technical team will be able to respond to. That does not stop you, member of the public, from sending in written submissions if you have additional concerns, and we will be happy to invite you to Parliament to express your concerns for us to respond. At the end of the day, we want every single Jamaican to know what this NIDS is about, or at least have the opportunity to know what it is about and to be able to express any skepticism. So we want in these town hall meetings to ensure that all misinformation or misleading comments are dealt with. So this evening, the Joint Select Committee are not necessarily media professionals, but we are going to be ensuring that persons viewing and listening, that you are able to participate. And we have a true professional who will moderate a fair amount of today's meetings, Ms. Naomi Francis, who will be engaging you, the members of the public. When you ask the question, she will be putting it to the members of the OPM. I will start out by putting a few questions to the NIDS team at the OPM, and I will ask the Principal Director, Mr. Warren Vernon, explain to the members of the public, Warren, what is NIDS?
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening to everybody online, watched on television, radio, right across Jamaica and across the world. In summary, the National Identification System is the cornerstone, the foundation for improving security in Jamaica, for slashing ID fraud and identity theft, offering better public services and cutting administration costs. Chairman, NIDS is a secure tool that can verify someone's identity, sign documents electronically, securely access services online and inline. The 2020 top 8 most innovative economies in the world all implemented a national identification program, similar to what we are doing in Jamaica, to simplify processes and embrace innovation. We will get an opportunity to learn more about NIDS as we progress through the bill.
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
Mrs. Williams, could you define NIDS and explain what are the objects of this bill?
Yes. Good evening, Chairman and other members of the committee and colleagues. The objects of the bill sets out the purpose of the bill. And these objects include to establish a national identification and registration authority. And this entity will be responsible for civil registration matters and the national identification system, which was previously explained by Mr. Vernon. With respect to civil registration, the bill proposes to establish a civil registration databases in which all information collected by the, or kept by the Registrar General will be stored. Additionally, with respect to the national identification system, the bill proposes to establish a national identification databases in which all identity information will be stored. The bill also proposes to provide for the enrollment of eligible persons and also to provide for a unique national identification number which will be assigned to each enrolled individual, and the issuance of a national identification card to each enrolled individual. Furthermore, the bill also proposes to provide for the prevention of identity theft and other types of fraud in relation to identity information. And also, the bill proposes to carry out the functions of the Registrar General through an office within the authority, and this office will be under the management and control of the authority.
Much, Ms. Williams. First of all, thank you so much, Minister, for starting your meeting off. And I want to welcome those who are online with us this evening. Already I see persons joining, not just from here at home in Jamaica, but from the United States of America, as well as Canada and the United Kingdom. And I see someone as far as Bangladesh joining us online this evening. As well, I want to let you know that there are social media platforms that while we have have questions from our technical experts, our social media platforms are there for you, members of the public, to ask your questions. We are on NIDS Facts, as well as the Prime Minister's social media pages, Andrew Holness JM, and of course, JIS website. We're streaming live as well on PBC Jamaica, and also live on PBC Jamaica, as well as CVM Television and Power 106. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I want to also, given that this is really a historic occasion, it's the first time that we're using the technology in such a way, and it's good that we've started using the technology with a discussion about NIDS, because this is the future. So I want to mix our discussion with a lot of the questions and interaction with members of the public, and already there are several questions on our platforms. And while we explain clause by clause the bill itself, certainly a lot of people are anxious to get their questions sorted out. So I want to start with a question from the public, and then I come back to some sections of the bill in terms of explaining clause by clause, Ms. Williams. But let me throw out a question already to those who are here joining us in the banquet hall at Jamaica House, as well as our resource persons online on Zoom. A first question from Mr. Devon Thompson on the Prime Minister's social media page. He asks, will NIDS be built and designed by locals? Very important question as we even look toward the legislative framework. A lot of people are concerned, well, how active are local Jamaicans involved in the process? And I think Mr. Warren Vernon may be able to respond well to that one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Naomi. The national identification system is a very complex system. It's a system that, require some level of support from international experts. When we sat down and designed the request for proposal, one of the requirements was to ensure that local players participate in the process. And so the key requirement was for us to establish a consortium with all of the expertise that are required to deliver the system. And we do have a number of local experts participating in the process, additionally with international experts, people who would have been implementing systems of this nature for years. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Vernon. So let's then go back to the lawyers a little bit. And when I say lawyers, I also include our legislators who are well able. I mean, the Minister of Justice certainly is an attorney at law, or Minister of Foreign Affairs, and certainly the Minister of State and the Ministry of Finance, very able and capable in terms of drafting this bill and looking at the clause to make sure that it's not just the legalese that matter, but certainly it inures to affecting you in a positive way. And so let's go back a little bit in terms of clause by clause. And we talked about really one of the clauses to establish a national identification database where all identifying information is collected by a single authority. Let's go first to a legislator, and then we come back to the technical team in terms of the importance of just having that database to ensure that persons their data is well protected. So, Minister, if you want to start off, then we go to one of the legislators and then come back to the technical team.
Well, I think we'd ask the Office of the Prime Minister to explain the particular clause or that the bill ensure that the data is properly protected. So I don't know, Warren, who will take that on.
Okay, I will take that one.
Yes.
And but just to set context before we talk about security, just to share some local data.
Yes.
The Passport Office would have reported over 2,000 cases of fraud, and all of these are related to identity theft. The Ministry of National Security would have reported over 400 cases involving identity theft. The RGD would have reported over 1,000 cases for forged birth certificates, and the aggregate losses arising from all deposit institutions in Jamaica report from 2018 amounted to approximately $620.5 million. I'm saying this for context for us to understand the major challenges that we are facing, not only within the private sector, but also within government itself. The But when you talk about security, how are we going to secure the solution? In the bill, there are a number of provisions that are under Clause 23, Security of Information. But I must say, Naomi, that the National Identification System will be the most secured system to ever be implemented by the government of Jamaica. And the card itself will be the most secured card to ever be implemented by the government of Jamaica. And why am I saying that? Because we are spending a lot to improve the security framework. Yes. And for the technical people listening, we are implementing for the first time a national public-private key infrastructure, which will be the security backbone for the solution.
I want you to drill down on that very carefully for members of the public, because already we have questions from members of the public concerning the security, and certainly the backbone provides that level of security and comfort in particular that members of the public need to be reassured about.
Yes, absolutely. And I am digging in. And so the key thing to note is really a security plan. You know, what is your security plan and what is the framework that we're using? And to understand the ecosystem for security, we have to start first with the governance, which is really what is before us, the legislative framework. And from the legislative framework, we do need and we are using this international framework. And the National Identification Program, we would have adopted the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, a very solid security framework, and we are also using the International Civil Aviation Organization standards for travel documents. And you may be wondering, why am I saying this? It is important for us to understand the frameworks that the system is hinged on. So the framework takes into consideration a number of things. The consideration in terms of the understanding for managing risk, because it is all about how do we manage risk. When you're driving on the road or walking on the road, let me use walking on the road, you're looking ahead and you're looking to see if somebody's going to bump in you, and you're also looking to see if there are potholes or water on the road that you're going to step in. And I'm using this example because similar with information systems, we have to put in place, and we would have done so, the technology to detect these things before they happen, because they will happen. But where you're going to come out on top is the ability to detect them before and also to take corrective actions. And the framework, importantly, is covering a number of risk points. People, and I want to place emphasis on people, because people, your greatest risk surrounding individuals, not necessarily computer systems. Most of the breaches that you would have seen linked to people. So we will have strong measures in place to govern the actions of the people who work on the system. All of the assets, the technology, the data, and all of the technical capabilities that we are building surrounding the system are included in that framework. But to be very specific, some of the things that we are doing, your birth certificate information will be stored separately from your fingerprints and facial image. Your fingerprints will be kept offline encrypted, meaning that it will be very difficult, almost impossible for anyone to be able to access that data. And I want to place emphasis on that. Your fingerprint will never be shared. Your fingerprints will be kept offline encrypted.
May I interject, because a lot of persons as well online, and may I just welcome Jamaicans in Grand Cayman who are also online, but a lot of persons are also concerned, Warren, about redundancies in the system. So we have a database. Would we be able to know who has access to that database, who has viewed our data, so to speak, and then what are, again, you're going through the penalties, but how then, if someone accesses it without authorization, would that be treated?
It is a requirement, Naomi, under this bill, and as part of the data protection framework that we are using as a guide, where once identity information is verified, the owner of the identity must be notified. That is built in the system, and the logs are protected by blockchain, meaning that irrespective of your rank within an organization, you can't delete those logs. Similar to your bank account, whenever you take money from your account, you can log in and you will see all of those. The same thing will happen, and you'll get those notifications, which is very important because we don't have that now. It's a major step forward where that is concerned.
Indeed. Can I pause you a second, Mr. Vernon, because I want to put then the legislators on the spot for a minute, because this is certainly one of a very key component that Jamaicans would certainly be comfortable now that they are understanding that this is in place and you can't just willingly go and access information about me. So I want to ask any one of the ministers who would really want to just share with us, because a lot of persons don't particularly understand the deliberations, the to and fro in terms of discussions in putting a bill together to safeguard rights of Jamaicans. And this is very important when we look at especially a safeguard that really is future forward, if you want to coin a term, in terms of looking at how we protect the data of Jamaicans. I'm really looking at Minister Johnson Smith or Yes, go ahead.
I noticed Naomi. Good evening to everyone joining us from Jamaica and across the world, and good evening to the Minister, to Chair, colleagues, and of course the technical team supporting us today. The process is such an involved one. So sometimes the Minister has, especially recently, been very involved in discussions about the length. People complaining about the length of the legislative process. What is responsible for building the system. Just to say that, Minister has been involved in discussing the length of the legislative process. And the length is due to the complexity of all of the organs and agencies and departments of government that are involved in making sure that we get things right. And when you're breaking new ground, like providing for a national ID system, you must have the strongest technical knowledge about the technology, about systems, about future-proofing, about the actual language and the constitutionality of issues. You must ensure that persons who understand how issues affect the common man and the understanding and clarity are brought forward so that the legislation can be implemented in a predictable and consistent way. And this takes time. And I just want to say that being able to look at development, which is as positive as that which has just been shared by Mr. Vernon, that takes quite a bit of thinking, and the benefit of it is not necessarily obvious on reading the bill. But when you understand that right now, if someone accesses public data about you, whether about your health, whether about your travel information, your identification, anything like that, within any public or private system, you will never know. But the NIDS will actually provide you with knowledge about anyone in the government system or in a private system who accesses your identification system. So what a step forward for transparency, what a step forward for ownership of what belongs to you, your identity and your data. And I think that's a massive improvement and a massive benefit that we will have to keep repeating so people understand that this is actually an improvement and not an increase in vulnerability, as I think some people may perceive just because of the use of electronic systems. So I would just, that's where I would end.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I would like to add and support what Minister Johnson Smith is saying in terms of the legislation. In all sincerity, it took us a long time, the bill having been put together by the Office of the Prime Minister with the CPC, the Parliamentary Council, who drafted the bill. It came to the Legislation Committee, and a number of us, including Minister Johnson Smith, Minister Auburn Hill, we had examined various aspects of the bill. But more importantly, members of the public, this is an opportunity for you to have a look at the bill, to understand what is in the bill. And if you have concerns, if you want addition to the bill, if you want extraction from the bill, and you can persuade the Joint Select Committee in its report to Parliament to have changes to the bill, this is the opportunity for the members of the public, because the Joint Select Committee very often recommend significant changes to bills that go to the Parliament. And I can assure you, if there's one person who goes in great detail, it's Senator Charles Sinclair. Senator Charles Sinclair
Himself
goes
a lawyer
through
as well.
every single phrase in a bill. So, you know, if you have any concern, express it. And believe me, Senator Charles Sinclair will be examining your concerns. I know this because when we put together the dog's liability for a tax bill, we spent one long evening going through every single phrase. So, members of the public, please ensure and know that you can participate in any amendment, addition, or subtraction to this bill.
Thank you so much, Minister. And we can't emphasize it enough that this process really is for members of the public to take advantage of by ensuring that their voice is heard, make a comment concerning the bill, send the submissions in so that the committee can examine it and recommend, if needs be, addition to the current legislation. I actually interrupted you, Mr. Vernon, concerning just clause by clause, but that one had to have been highlighted because certainly it puts Jamaica way ahead of so many countries in the world, not just the region, but in the world. And certainly when it comes to this particular legislation, with those clauses, it will put us way leading ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we'll get an opportunity to join a lot of the countries that are considered to be the most innovative in the world. But you see, the conversation about security is a big conversation, a conversation that will take months and even years to discuss. But to continue the conversation, when you look at what is happening now within government to produce an identification card, and when I say an identification card, I'm referring to what is in place now. And when you compare that to what we will be doing, what is being proposed for the NIDS, is that the levels of verification and vetting is about 8 different levels that you'll have to pass through. And those levels are not in the same physical space, and there is separation of roles. When you go to an enrollment site to enroll, having completed that process, you have off-site that is doing what you call detailed vetting. And this is very important because the simplification of the bureaucratic processes in government, when you go to a government entity now, you're producing the same information over and over. And what they're doing, they're actually vetting you every time. What the government is proposing is that the vetting is carefully done once and the verification is done every time. And you are notified every time. And this is what the most innovative countries in the world, this is what they are doing. Why is it, and you mentioned it earlier, Naomi, why am I required to be producing the same information everywhere I go across government and everywhere I go across the private sector? And most of the time it's identity information.
Yes.
What we are proposing is that this information will be captured once, will be vetted once, and you can go anywhere and verify yourself, and there's no need for you to produce that same information.
That's such an important point. I want you to repeat it for us, Mr. Vernon, but I want to go to either Minister Johnson-Smith or Senator Sinclair again, because, you know, again, the questions are coming in fast and furious, and we have a very attentive audience on social media posing some very interesting questions. I want to go over to the issue of international treaties, and I believe it's Anthony Lewis who asked this question on Facebook concerning if international companies, as is with some of these social media platforms, they can give your information and share it with other agencies, so to speak. Will international companies be able to access information on the NIDS? Yes.
Continue the conversation with that part, the legal matter, but
Yes.
I do know, I'm aware
Yes.
that there's a provision in the bill for disclosure of information. And we have a specific process that we'll use. And this is also tied to the data protection law. Again, the principle behind it is your data, and the disclosure of the data will require your consent.
Always bear in mind, though.
So it's critical disclosure is the important element as well.
access.
I'm sorry. Yes,
Remember
yes.
now, to that member of the public.
No,
Yes.
no.
Once someone,
Yes.
once someone access information with the authority, because it's the authority that will give information, then that person will immediately know that a certain agency, it could be the bank that has asked for verification, or it could be an embassy that asks for verification of the ID card, and immediately that person will know that the embassy, the bank, or the international agency has asked for verification of the ID card. Is it?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
If
Vernon,
I-
and then I'll come
yes.
to Senator
If
Johnson.
I may just add to this, we are living in a global space, and Jamaicans are all over the world. If you have a Jamaican, for example, in Canada, and they want to utilize their identification card to conduct business, the way how the card is designed, you have to authenticate, similar to how you use your credit card and your debit card when you're abroad. And if you notice, most of the cards are now equipped with security features where you have to put in a PIN. And what we are saying is that you will authenticate using yourself along with your PIN. So we are building a system to allow Jamaicans to function anywhere in the world. And this is very important. We
Yes.
talk about, under the program, introducing digital birth certificate.
Yes.
If you are living in the US as a Jamaican and you need a copy of your birth certificate and you have your national ID card, because we know who is behind the computer screen, you will be able to authenticate and print a copy of your birth certificate and use it. So we have to look at limitation in context.
Yes. Fantastic. So, Minister Johnson-Smith, if you could chime in, because you were trying to make a point earlier as well. Once the light comes on, you're good. Yes? Oh, all right. One more time. I think you've almost got it. All right, there you go.
The magic touch. So I just wanted to make the point that generally there is not access to your identity information. What happens is that companies will be able to use your card or your NIN to authenticate your identity, and they don't need access to your information in order to do that. In fact, they're prevented from that. Your information is protected by the many layers that Mr. Vernon is going to ensure are around your data.
Yes.
But the provisions in terms of access to data, so your data can be released with your instruction, on your instruction, or in certain circumstances on application to a judge. That's in particular circumstances, but that's provided for in Clause 24. So as this is an educational process, I want to really suggest that persons who love the details and love to read the law, that you could have a look at Clause 24 of the bill. That's the one that deals with access to identity information. And then maybe you can ask your questions about anything that arises in that in another town hall, if not later today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Minister. And of course, the bill is located on JA Parliament. So you can go to the Parliament of Jamaica, the website, and access the bill. The questions are coming in fast and furious, so I think we're almost deviating a little bit from the explanation of the clause by clause. We do have, 6 town halls, so we have all of that time to also go through clause by clause, but we have an attentive audience. Minister Johnson-Smith, though, before I go back to the questions from the social media participants, she mentioned something very important. The NIN. And so, Mr. Vernon, Ms. Williams, if you could just explain that element. And I see persons commenting, and I'll read one of the comments. When can I sign up for my card? so if you could explain that, and then we go back to the questions concerning all these.
Okay, thank you for that question, Naomi. The NIN, the National Identification Number, this is a unique number that is assigned to each enrolled individual. So this number is a number that is unique, and it is permanently assigned to an enrolled individual, and it cannot be assigned or reassigned to any other individual. You had also mentioned the card, the national identification card. So also each enrolled individual shall be issued with a national identification card. Upon enrollment, right, they shall be issued with his national identification card.
Could I just emphasize, from all the discussions we have had, the NIN, the National Identification Number, is not only unique to the individual, but when that individual dies, that number stays with that individual, and it cannot be used again by anyone who seeks. In other words, what happens nowadays is that persons who want to get a separate passport or a separate driver's license go and use a dead person's birth certificate, which we know, and then go ahead, get someone to sign that it's that person's name, and they can get a second ID. That will not happen, and that is what the National Identification System is meant to terminate, the fraud that oftentimes happen with the birth certificate.
So we'll eliminate fraud from the system with the NIDS. We have approximately 50 minutes left. Time is going so fast. And I want to get through a couple of the questions as well on social media. We have several of the outlets. So let's go over back to the Prime Minister's social media page on Facebook. Natasha Trail asks, how does the bill affect TRN and driver's licenses? Shall I choose someone? All right, go ahead.
Okay, let us. Currently, your TRN is also is the same number that is on your driver's license. But we also need to, again, look at this in context, because we are implementing a system that is voluntary, meaning that there are some persons that are not going to sign up for the NIDS initially. We know in the future when you see other persons around you experiencing the major benefits, you will. But initially, we are building a system that must support two sides. The TRN, based on our consultation with tax admin, that is a tax number. It really was designed for tax, and it will always be there. In fact, you do have entities, companies with TRN, and you have individuals with TRN also. But the national ID and this NIN, the National Identification Number, is really a number for an individual. Fantastic. So all of the other numbers, it's important to note that they will continue. However, if you have a NIN, that is the only thing that you will need to engage the private and public sector.
If you could, for us, in very descriptive language, help us to understand and see the difference between what currently exists and what will be on the card itself, the NIN.
So the best way to put it is that we are moving from an insecure system to a very secured system. I spoke earlier about the number of fraud cases with the existing systems, and the major difference here is the security layer that we are adding to the system, and also the integration that we will provide where the system is concerned. There are a number of additional features that we are bringing with this system, the ability for you to sign using your card. We don't have the use of digital signature now, and we will be providing the use of digital signature. On the existing cards, we don't have the ability to authenticate, meaning to use it to sign securely in a government service or maybe a private sector service. With that ID or card, you will be able to do that. So, in other words, it's as if the government is issuing every citizen, irrespective of your status, a token for you to have the same level of access right across the board.
All right, that's fantastic. So a lot of persons from the diaspora really are very engaged in this process of hearing and understanding what the NIDS will be. And many of them are also asking how then will they be able to, if they hold dual citizenship or if they remain with their Jamaican citizenship overseas but working, or if they have given up the Jamaican citizenship, though they are born Jamaicans, how can they access it? So it's so many different levels in terms of Jamaicans who live abroad.
Nadine, you want to take the one with the ordinary residents? And yes.
Yes.
The intention is that this regime is to apply to citizens.
Yes, go ahead.
To
Yes, if you could start over again so they can hear.
Yes, the intention, this entire policy, the regime, is to apply to Jamaican citizens and persons who are ordinarily resident in Jamaica. That phrase is present in some of our laws, and I will admit it's not always the clearest of phrases, but it is intended to convey that the person, Jamaica must be that person's residence, even though they're not. It must at least one of the person's residence, even if you're not a Jamaican citizen. That is what the ordinarily resident phrase intends to convey. A Jamaican living overseas who elects to retain their Jamaican citizenship will clearly be able to enroll in the NIDS. The Jamaican overseas, however, who has chosen to adopt another country's citizenship is not denied their Jamaican citizenship. Particularly if they're a Jamaican by birth. Your citizenship is something that is always there for you. So the NIDS is there for you if you wish to resume your Jamaican status.
That's good news for everybody in the diaspora.
Yes, I think
really.
that is the
I
best answer I can give.
I have one more for you then. What about those who have adopted Jamaica as their home?
Well, that is it. The ordinary resident. If you adopt Jamaica as your home, Jamaica is one of your residences and you are present in Jamaica for considerable periods of time in the year. A lot of people come, they'll spend 6 months, 8 months, and they go overseas. Yes, there are people who can enroll in the NIDS.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to go to now an issue that so many people have on their minds, this issue of the mandatory nature. Is it mandatory? So I have a question here from Dave Bro on Instagram who asks, let me just be sure, would it be mandatory, would the NIDS be mandatory, or will we still be able to use passport, driver's license, or other IDs to conduct business right across the board?
No, the NIDS is not mandatory. As a matter of fact, it is voluntary. And when the person or when the individual is going for enrollment, the authority, that's the National Identification and Registration Authority, shall inform that individual that the enrollment is voluntary and that they can cancel. So that information is passed on to the individual upon enrollment.
So so let's be clear with members of the public, because too, a lot of people say, boy, the greatest right I have in life is the right of choice, free will. So you choose to be part of NIDS, to be patently clear. Ms. Williams?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
All right.
Remember, by the way, this was one of the reasons why the last bill was struck down. And we have ensured that this bill is voluntary. So it's very important for the public to know, but we hope that the benefits that will accrue from having a NIDS card, such as accessing services from the public and private sector easily, that the vast majority of Jamaicans, once the trust and confidence develop in the system, we hope that 99% of Jamaicans will get a NIDS card.
Thank you so much, Minister. I can just give you an update on Facebook alone, the Prime Minister's page, and I haven't gone to NITS Facts as yet, or JIS or PBCJ's stream, but already we have 435 persons watching from across the world, Jamaican across the world, and just some comments that come up. One person, Chev says, boy, I'm a skeptic, but it seems that I need to get on board with NIDS, and there are some others who are making similar comments. But there's one from Dave before I go back to the issue of the benefits, Mr. Vernon. Dave asks, and did I lose his thing here? He was asking concerning costs. Is there a cost to the Jamaican citizen for NIDS in terms of the card and accessing it?
And the answer is no. It is free for all Jamaicans. Yes. The replacement, however, if you lose your card, then you'll have to pay to replace it.
Bear in mind, people should know that once could you give the detail if you're under 18? It's every 5 years a new card is issued.
Sure.
And if you're over 18, just give the exact information from the police.
No problem. So in terms of the period of validity of the national identification card, if an individual is younger than 18 years, the card shall be valid for 5 years. And it is renewable for successive periods. If the individual is 18 years and older, but younger than 60 years, then the card shall be valid for 10 years and also is renewable. And if the individual is 6 years and older, then the card is valid for 15 years.
And all the renewals are free?
Yes. Yes.
So the only time that it costs a citizen is if they lose the card.
60 or 16? I'm sorry.
60. Oh, sorry, 60.
60
years and
Thank
older,
you.
yes.
All right, wonderful. I wanted to, Minister Chuck, go to the issue of, so many times persons, when they conduct business in Jamaica, need justices of the peace. And I see our Attorney General, Marlene Malahoo Fort, here with us. Thank you so much, Attorney General, for joining us as well inside. She was online and now she's physically here with us. But Minister, I want you to talk a little bit more too about justices of the peace. And I do know that we have many on our Zoom platform who are joining us in terms of their role now with a NIDS bill.
It will be significantly reduced because at the moment when justices of the peace are asked to witness a passport form or any photograph as being that person, or they're asked to verify, information to the banks, etc., that will be eliminated. Because once you have the NIDS card, it is not only a unique identification, but it is the identification. You don't need anyone to verify that that is you. What may happen is that the bank may check and ask the authority, did you issue this card? And the authority will say yes. So, and then the person will be informed that, as I said earlier, the embassy or the bank have asked for your verification of your NIDS card. But the point is that it is going to eliminate a lot of the work which is now imposed on justice of the peace. For example, we hope that when at the moment you have to have verification of a photograph for, say, the passport, and also verifying that this is your name, with the NIDS card, that may well be eliminated. I know that the authority, once it's set up, will be working with the passport office to reduce that. You also have pensioners who have to have every 3 months verification that you are alive. Now, with this NIDS card and the fact that it is the Registrar General comes within this authority, immediately once a death occurs, then the card will now be retired to archives. And in those circumstances, the Accountant General will know who has passed away, and therefore no additional payments should be made to that person. The problem we have is that you have a situation now which is noted in the Gleaner today, to be exact, where checks are being issued, and very sadly, that is can amount to a bit of fraud, that persons are verifying that the pensioner is still alive when they have actually died. But with the NIDS card, it may well happen that immediately it could be eliminated. So there are lots of features that the NIDS card will eliminate, and the work of the GPs will be significantly reduced.
Thank you, Minister. I see Senator Sinclair nodding his head and you wanting to contribute as well. Senator?
I was just listening to the comments that have been made by Minister Chuck, and you spoke of the benefits. I can see many other benefits that spring from it in respect to persons needing to get verification, even in respect to addresses, their address, because that is a critical component. And from what I saw in the legislation is that the card holder, the citizen who holds and is enrolled, can update the information in respect to any particular aspect of what is required for the purpose of enrollment, that they can update it as they go along. So if they move from one address to the other, that is something that can be introduced onto the system, so that if it needs to be verified by whilst they seek service, it is done quickly. And so the card is almost an ultimate type of system. And I think it has tremendous benefit to persons who will be enrolled in seeking out services.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. I do know we have many justices of the peace on our Zoom platform, if we could bring them up as well. And I believe some may have some questions. And there is a question from Zoom. I don't know if we can go straight to Zoom for the person to ask their question, or we just pose the question for the individual. All right, and the question is coming from Ms. Maitland on Zoom, and the question concerns fraud, just a clarification concerning how we deal with the issue of fraud currently and what the NIDS would do to eliminate that. Mr. Vernon, you want to take that, AG, or?
Well, I can speak to the controls that we are putting in place to prevent ID fraud.
Yes.
My colleagues will speak to the legal matters. But one of the key things, and we need to notice that we are doing to prevent ID fraud, is the introduction of fingerprints and facial image as part of the ID to secure it. Because all of the IDs that we would have issued to date apart from EOJ, and that is why in Jamaica we can be proud to have one vote to one person when compared to some other countries because of the fingerprints. It's a similar opportunity here where you're using the fingerprints and the facial image to secure the card, yes, to make sure that it is unique to you, and this is new. And additionally, we are also adding that layer of security that I spoke about, which is the public-private key infrastructure that has never been done before to secure your ID. So once you're registered, you're locked into that identity for life.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Vernon. I know the AG is here. She's going through, and she's as meticulous as all the other legislators in terms of looking clause by clause at the bill. I wanted to go back to one of our legislators, in particular, though, Minister Chuck, because the justices of the peace play a critical role. And I did have a question here. Unfortunately, I lost it because Mr. Downer from London, England says it's way late at night, and I'm up watching because I'm excited about this for Jamaica. Thank you so much, Mr. Downer. But I wanted to get a sense now of then the changing role, so to speak, in terms of bringing the whole justice of the peace process up to, as young people would say, the time and technology.
Well, there's no doubt that this NIDS card will make, as I said earlier, make it easier for GP so that they don't have to go and verify a number of persons. But the point is that the justice of the peace, I've encouraged all the GPs to be a part of this process by examining the bill and trying to ensure that the trust and confidence of the citizens in their communities are taken into consideration. So GPs generally will be looking at the bill. I've asked them to please be sort of ambassadors for this NIDS bill, because they can explain to the average person in their communities that this bill, any concerns that they have, they can not only bring it to the custos, they can also bring it to me, so we can respond. If there are questions that I can't answer, I'm sure that the legal team at the Office of the Prime Minister will be able to respond to.
I think people are looking forward to the NIDS bill being passed, actually, and to be part of this process, because already persons are asking about timelines. So let's talk a little bit in terms of timelines, Mr. Vernon.
Okay. Naturally, we won't be able to enroll persons until the legal framework is in place. But outside of the legal framework, we can provide the country with an update as to where we are. And if we receive the legal framework by May, we will be in a position to start personalizing the first card by September 2021.
By September this year?
Yes.
In 9 months?
Yes, we will be able to start, because we have been doing a lot of work in the background. National identification systems are really standard systems globally. But the importance here from the legislative framework is really the controls, the tighter controls that we are putting in place to ensure that the rights of all Jamaicans and the persons who are participating in this program, they are protected.
All right, wonderful. Can we go a little bit to some questions then?
While they're looking for that, Naomi, maybe I could
There's
ask
so many questions.
the
That's the
OPM
issue. Yes.
to explain, when we actually pass the bill and you go to the public, what information will you require of each person so that we can authenticate the uniqueness of that person? Could you just explain to the public what information that they will have to provide that will be stored by the authority, and what bits of those information will be on the card itself?
Okay. So let me take the first part, and then you go into the specifics. So
Okay.
the exact information that is required to really establish who you are or your identity is your facial image, picture of your face, your fingerprints. And naturally there will be some Jamaicans that won't have fingerprints, especially persons with special needs. But we do have processes to do the vetting. Additionally, we will need an address, a verified address, and we will also need, if available, existing reference numbers, meaning, for example, your TRN or your NIS. And the reason for this is to ensure that we maintain the integrity of the existing systems that we have, because there are several persons out there who would have been a part of the formal system, and you don't want NIDS to be a tool that establish a brand new identity for somebody when they already have loans with financial institutions or they have existing commitments. So while we are simplifying everything, we also have to ensure that we take into consideration the existing market and try to streamline. So it's important to note that. So in a simple way, again, all we need: facial image, fingerprints, proof of address, and your birth certificate information for Jamaicans. And if you weren't born in Jamaica, we will take your passport information. And if you want
Ms. Williams.
comment
Yes.
on the specifics.
Specific? Okay, very well. Yes, so in terms of the specific requirements, Clause 11 of the bill proposes to provide for that list that is required for enrollment. So in terms
I'm sorry,
of...
could you repeat the clause? Because we also
Okay.
want persons online to go and look at the bill, read it themselves, and be comfortable as well. So repeat that clause for us.
Clause 11?
Clause 11.
Clause
yes.
11 of the bill.
Go ahead,
Yes.
please.
So the information that is required, the full name of the individual, date of birth, country of birth, place of birth, names of mother and father, whether the individual is male or female, your principal place of residence, your nationality, in the case of an individual who's not a citizen of Jamaica, your period of residence, also in the case of an individual who's not a citizen of Jamaica, your marital status, name of spouse if applicable, occupation. And as Mr. Vernon had previously stated, your facial image, fingerprints, and manual signature in the case of an individual who is 18 years and older. And the reference numbers, where applicable, your TRN, driver's license number, your passport number, national insurance number, path number, and electoral registration number. I must also indicate, though, that if the individual is unable to supply all of the information that is required by the authority, then the authority may determine, based on the information that they have gathered, if the information, if it is sufficient for enrollment.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So again, the question's coming quick and fast, so we're going to have to figure out how we do this. And ladies and gentlemen of the public, I can assure you, one, the committee will not duck from any question. They will answer and patiently answer every question you have and allay every fear and concern you have. And two, we have more than one. So we have another tomorrow, and then we have 4 others throughout the month of January. So allow me to go then to social media. Coming back to Zoom, because there is a question on Zoom. We have about, well, several. And forgive me, ladies and gentlemen of the public, because I'm calling your name, but because the questions are coming so fast, I can't keep up with names of those who have asked. So let me go to 2 quick questions I'll throw out, and or persons in-house will be able to respond. Is this similar to the Social Security system in the United States? And importantly, so many persons have asked this question. I think the Minister of Justice and other ministers could take this one too. Is it going to be linked to how we deal with crime in Jamaica? So let's take the Social Security one first, and then we'll go to the others, which the legislators, I'm sure, wouldn't have an issue responding to. Social Security.
So, our knowledge of the Social Security program in the U.S. is more, it would be akin to the TRN.
Yes.
And surprisingly, when you check the websites, the U.S. websites, the requirement for you to get your social is that you need to provide proof of identity. And that proof of identity, in fact, you need a photograph. And some of the challenges that the U.S. is currently facing, they are mainly linked to identity theft, where you have multiple persons using the same social. And it is for this reason why the U.S. introduced the Real ID Act. And there have been major discussions now about, how they can implement at this federal level a national ID program. But they do have the Real ID Act, and all of the IDs that are issued by the various states, they have to be in compliant with those.
So Jamaica is in step or a step ahead?
Well, let me put it this way, because I tend to be very careful when I comment on other partners, but what I can say is that Jamaica is moving in the right direction to ensure that we have a very secure national ID program that is in line with what is happening in some of the most innovative countries in the world. In fact, I mentioned the top 8 most innovative countries in the world, what they are doing. And a lot of them, are similar to us, because they don't have plenty resources, they don't have plenty people to serve, so they utilize the technology to simplify things and to be able to deliver quality services. And I name one, and the reason why I'm going to name this one, Finland. Finland, and Minister, you remember the journey. Finland, in fact, started out similar to us, where there were a lot of confusion and rejection for the national ID program, and it wasn't done properly. But now they are using it to drive innovation, and they are part of the top 8 2020 most innovative economies in the world. And this is where we want to go as a country.
Prime Minister talks about Jamaica meeting the fourth industrial revolution and getting to develop nation state, and certainly this is one plank to get there. Minister, you wanted to make a point.
As to whether it will assist in the detection and prevention of crime, the answer is yes and no. No, the police will not have access to the database.
Repeat that, Minister.
The police will not have access to the database, but the police, through a superintendent and a rank higher than a superintendent, can apply to a judge in a commission. No, the commissioner. Sorry, the commissioner. The commissioner. That's clause 24. The commissioner may, without, make an application to a judge in chambers to disclose information get information from the authority for the prevention, detection, or investigation of crime, or in the interest of national security. But whatever information that is being required or seeking access must come before a judge, and the judge must approve that that information can be released. It may be the fingerprint, it may be the facial image, it may be the address. I don't know what the commissioner will need from the judge. But bear in mind that information is kept secret and confidential, and the clause 24, once it is used, it must be destroyed. But if it is intended to keep it, then the judge will have to approve that the information can be retained. And I want to note clause 30. Clause 30 emphasizes that any information like what is released to the Commissioner of Police must not only be secret, but if it is at all released, it is a criminal offense. Clause 30 makes it a criminal offense if it is used at all other than what the judge approves it for.
Yes, so I hear Minister Johnson-Smith.
Yes, Minister Johnson-Smith is reminding, because people believe that once you have this database, that everyone have access to it. Absolutely no one has access to the NERA. I mean, to access. They can only get verification. The police, the security forces, no one will have access to the database. They can only get verification from the authority.
So we have about 20 minutes left in this broadcast, and it goes so fast, but we're coming back tomorrow, and I want us to then fully go through clause 24 and clause 30. I say that because I do see a number of persons wanting to fully understand, and I just want for emphasis to note that the minister did not say a corporal or a constable or an inspector or a superintendent. It is the chief police, the commissioner, who must apply to not a resident magistrate, but a judge of the Supreme Court. Am I correct, Minister?
That is correct.
And that is enshrined in this bill, well, not enshrined quite, but it is contained in this bill that will be made law. So it's the commissioner, very important, that will, pardon me, Minister, go ahead, please.
Just confirming that,
yes.
You would apply for information, not access.
Right, you apply for the information. So no one has the access, but they apply for the information. So tomorrow, in our town hall, we'll zero in on this element, and I'm going to ask tomorrow, too, for the AG to especially work through this with us so that we can fully understand as well. Sure, pardon me. Yes, go ahead. If we could just get that microphone. No, you can stay right there, AG. Just get the microphone to you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So first of all, I would invite everyone to read the bill. Laws are not just for lawyers. The bill is written in as simple a language as it can be to achieve the goals and deal with the complexities. But laws are laws, and there are particular ways of writing law. But the language is clear and easily understood. There is a system to the national identification system. So there is a category of information which is provided, and you have biographical and biometric information, going back to the wider question of fraud. And there are certain types of information, the biometric information, which is unique to the individual. And then you have another category with the numbers. When the information is supplied, it has to be verified. And there are rules in relation to storage and retrieval and access and disclosure. So it's a layered system that goes through different stages, different tiers, with the different rules that apply. And the minister is indeed correct that in respect of disclosure of the information, Clause 24 provides that the authority generally prohibits the authority from disclosing the identity information stored in the database about an individual. And then it provides for exception, and that is in accordance with the request of the individual concerned. And secondly, in accordance with an order of the judge made pursuant to the following subsection, and in the other cases, what is provided for in the law itself. And the minister has pointed out that the level of access that is provided for application, that is, it's at the highest level, and there is a reason for that. What goes with the seniority, the discretion, the training, understanding. And that application is indeed to the Supreme Court. We no longer have resident magistrates. They are parish judges, right? And the way in, and it is for specific purpose that the disclosure would be permitted. But as Minister Johnson-Smith reminded, it is not for the police to access the database, but for certain aspect of the identity information to be disclosed for specific purpose, which include the prevention, detection, or investigation of crime, or in the interest of national security. And there are checks and balances to deal with these very thorny issues, because I know people get very, very anxious when the issue of crime and national security is used, and some are of the view that it is sometimes used as a blanket term to take away people's rights. But rights and responsibilities come, but there are sufficient safeguards built in, and we will be listening for any suggestion or any concerns, and then see if those concerns are adequately addressed, or if any change needs to be made. That is the whole purpose of subjecting the bill to this process. So, but there's no getting around reading it. Even if we tell you it's not our idea of it, you really have to know what is contained in it.
All right, thank you so much, Madam AG. Really appreciate it. I know someone on Zoom has been waiting and waiting to make a contribution. So let's go to Zoom. I believe it's Ms. Maitland who wanted to just ask her question in person. So let's go over there, team. Is she still on? All right, while we get, okay, wonderful. Yes, Ms. Maitland, go ahead, please. I think you're on mute. So, yes? All right.
Good evening.
We're hearing you loud and clear.
Great. I'm Jamaica from CVM TV. I had a couple of questions. I'm just going to load them through. My question is for the Attorney General. So first, did the ruling of the Supreme Court made the NERA Act right now less effective? And I wanted to find out what percentage of intake or enrollment would make the system effective, being that it's voluntary. And I also wanted to find out from Mr. Vernon, being that he said that if approved, if the law is passed, the first card could be ready by September. I wanted to find out that majority of Jamaicans, they have the EOJ card. What will happen to those who refuse to participate or to enroll in the NIDS? What would happen to their cards? Did that the EOJ plans to renew the cards, to have an extension? Because I know that it has a deadline or a timeline as it relates to when the cards are no longer in service.
Hey, Jamila, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, so let's start with the last one first, can we? Warren?
Oh, okay, and thank you very much, Naomi. It is important to note that the legislative framework governing the EOJ is completely different from the National Identification Program. And from our interactions with policymakers, the EOJ is a very special organization and very important part of who we are as a country. And the NIDS program, therefore, is completely separate and must be viewed completely separate. The NIDS program is about providing identification card for all Jamaicans that are interested in the simplification or the simple ways of doing business. And that is the main point, that I will put forward, that it is completely separate. And if you want to have a simple and easy way to conduct business, then the NIDS is for you. Naturally, we would have used the data in a number of countries that implemented systems of this nature, and the take-up will take time. In most of those countries, the take-up is between 1 to 5 years. But the investment, the long-term investment, and when we get there, will be major. If we are able on September 1st to issue a card to somebody that is on the pension program, whether it be 5 or 10, I read an article and they have quite a number of pensioners, deceased pensioners, that appear on the list. If we are able to reduce that, that's a major benefit for the country. If we are able to reduce the millions of dollars that are being, that the financial system is losing now, if we are able to eliminate the bureaucratic processes in government, if we are able to get rid of corruption, because the bureaucratic processes, we must admit, is contributing to corruption. You want to get something done quickly and you can't get it done quickly, so you talk to somebody else to help you. This is what we are trying to eliminate. When you look at the Nordic countries and all of those countries with the transparency, they are doing it because they simplify the process, and irrespective of who you are and your status, you are going through the same process and you are getting the same SLA, you are getting the same service level agreement. If they agree that they are going to deliver a service to you within 2 business days, you will get it within 2 business days. That is what we are trying to accomplish. But again, the EOJ is a complete different legislative framework, and for now we receive no policy directions where that is concerned.
And NIDS is really about ease and efficiency. Two very important words that you used. Let's go to the AG, who will respond to the other questions that was asked.
So, Naomi, here we are in the digital age, and the government is taking steps to make life easier for its citizens and those who are ordinarily resident in Jamaica. We know of the fact that there are various requirements for the establishment and verification of identification. And having a unique identification card is not unique to Jamaica. I will leave it to members of the public to decide whether in an age where you cannot transact or do business on many fronts without establishing and verifying your identity, they would want to opt in to a system. I have heard the comments about whether having a voluntary system is going to make it less effective because persons may choose not to be a part of it. I think all choices are exercised in context. And I believe at the end of the day, when our citizens and those who are ordinarily resident in Jamaica are sufficiently informed about the process and the added advantages that will come in this age, that they will opt in. But Jamaica is categorized as a free and democratic society, and the rules say when you so categorize yourself and you guarantee rights and freedoms, then there is a certain approach that you must take. I do have my views on the ruling of the court, but they will have to wait to hear about those when I write about them. Right now, this is take 2 on the NIDS, and we're moving forward. And in fact, this was part of the process that persons complained about that the bill did not have the opportunity of going through a joint select committee of Parliament so that the newness of it and the issues could be aired. So here we are, we're doing what was asked for. So Jamaicans will make up their own minds in due course. And this is an extremely useful process in helping them along the way and also informing them about what is contained in the proposed law.
Thank you so much, AG. And of course, I said at the start that this is really historic because we're using the technology really to involve not just Jamaicans resident in Jamaica, but Jamaicans home and abroad who would be able to comment and, of course, ask questions so that we fine-tune the legislation as is. We only have, well, we have 8 minutes left. The time really rolls by very, very fast when you're having fun, right? I wanted to, and tomorrow I want to outline really how we will approach the discussion tomorrow, because it's very important, because really we are about ensuring that all Jamaicans fully understand what's in the bill, and we want to ensure that we patiently answer every question you have. Any question you have, please pose them. They will not be ducked from. But there's a question from Camille Wildman who has been asking and asking and asking. She didn't say where in the world she is, if she's in Jamaica, but she has asked for a comparative. So I'm going to go to Mr. Vernon on this. Is there any other country in the world that uses facial recognition and fingerprints to deal with their identification, national identification process?
Okay, so there are a number of countries, and I'm just trying to find a list here, but I can go from memory. Mm-hmm. We have all of the Nordic countries. You have Denmark, you have Finland, you have Estonia, you have South Korea. All of those countries are leaders.
And Jermaine Gray says Singapore, Mr. Vernon.
Yes, and Singapore too.
Yes.
And naturally Singapore, and we always talk about Singapore and connect ourselves with Singapore. So there are so many use cases out there, but the key ones that we would have looked at, and we looked at them because of the level of transparency and the quality services that they provide using the national ID. And again, just to repeat, you have South Korea, you have Singapore, you have Finland, Denmark, even France. All of those countries, absolutely. All of those countries have a national ID program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vernon. You know, because we are almost out of time, Minister, you're chiming in? No? All right. So because we're almost out of time, I want to hand back to Minister Chuck, who will conclude the Joint Select Committee. Remember, ladies and gentlemen of the media and the public, that really you've been invited in. You've actually seen and been able to speak to not just a technical committee, but the legislators who are here from both sides on Zoom and physically in the room here at the banquet hall at Jamaica House to fully explain to you what this process is about. Now, as I said earlier, we're coming back tomorrow to do more, to answer your questions and to talk more about the bill. I want to, as I said before, ensure that we're all comfortable and fully understand clauses 24 through to 30 concerning the issue of security and sharing, regarding especially what the police can do if they want to access the information. So those are our two elements I think we can hone in on tomorrow, as well as we're bringing back some of the justices of the peace tomorrow, Minister, and other key players in the society, so that we'll be able to have them online, fully answer their questions, as well as get their comments on the bill, and of course have the committee members back with us and to the technical committee. So Minister, I hand back over to you for your final comments, and certainly for those in the Joint Select Committee.
I want to thank all the listeners and viewers who have sent in questions. We have more than enough questions to respond to tomorrow. Some of them, Naomi, we will take on up front. We have barely touched and many of the clauses in the bill. Several clauses, when you look at part 3 of the bill, that deals with not only how the national database is set up, how you enroll, what is the content of what will be on the card itself, because we need to look at that so that we know exactly what will be on the card, so that persons can feel comfortable. If they feel that less should be put on the card, we will discuss that. If they feel more should be put on the card, then we will also discuss that. We also need to look at how does enrollment start, so that from birth we might take the picture of a child at birth, and maybe after 3 years get another ID card, or maybe after 5 years, so that it is the parent or parents that will register the child at birth. Now with the national ID card, when they get to prep school or to primary school and then to high school, they have the national ID card, which means they don't have to go and get a birth certificate and a lot of other information. That is important to note. Then what is also important is for us to let persons know, yes, you can opt out of the system. You opt in, but when you opt out, there are certain safeguards, because we are going to retain that unique identification system, and we want to let people be very comfortable in getting that ID system. What is very important to us as legislators, we want to be able to address all the skepticism, all the concerns of people at large. One question came to me is what happened to the regulations? The truth of the matter is that the regulations have already been drafted. So we have draft regulations. They are now being reviewed, and we are hoping that when we debate this bill in Parliament, whether in April or May, that the regulations will, at least the draft regulations, will be there so that parliamentarians and the public at large will have an idea what is in the regulations. What is important to note is that when we meet tomorrow, next week and the other week, we may repeat some of the issues that were addressed today, but it's also important that we cover more areas of the bill, because we want people to get a full understanding of all the different sections of the bill. We want people to know that apart from the authority itself, there will be an inspectorate, and this inspectorate will be examining the functioning of this authority. We want people to know that this bill will be supervised by the data protection commissioners, so that it is important we make these points when we look at the bill and we consider it, because this bill is so important that we want the citizens of Jamaica to have confidence and trust in it. Attorney AG, you would like to add something?
Help focus the attention of those who are participating. In particular, we would benefit greatly from hearing what concerns they have on the privacy issues, because that has been one of the major areas that has generated much debate in the public space.
Sure. So basically, thank you, AG. Persons who listen, view, and would like to participate, bring up these issues, and we will respond to them. But more importantly, as you said earlier, AG, the bill is available on Jamaica, in the Jamaica Parliament website. Have a look at it. Those persons who can't get a copy, they can contact the MOJ website also. I have circulated it to the custodies in all the parishes, and the custodies have circulated it, the bill itself, to JPs in the parishes. So to the extent that citizens have not seen a copy as yet, check with a JP, and the JP can access it from the custodies or from myself. The bill, as was pointed out, the AG pointed out and others have pointed out, is a very simple bill. It has only 41 pages, and really and truly, each clause is easy to read and understand. So that we want you, those persons who have not had their question answered as yet, join us again tomorrow at 5:30, and we continue further discussion on the bill. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And we now call the Joint Select Committee to a close. We ask a motion of adjournment. And seconded. Meeting of the JSC is complete.
The new NIDS bill has been drafted and is ready for review. We want to hear from you. Go to www.japarliament.gov.jm to download a copy of the new bill. Join the conversation. Make a written submission to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston, or via email clark@japarliament.gov.jm. All written submissions must be sent by Friday, January 29, 2021. Join the process. Let your voice be heard.